The galactic hegemony had existed for 12,000 years, uniting 57 species across 8 spiral arms. Throughout its long history, no force had ever seriously challenged its power. Most new species quickly accepted their place as subjects once they understood the vastness of the empire they faced. Admiral Zox Thurian stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Dominant Will. He was tall even for a Valaxian, with mottled blue-gray skin and 6 dark eyes arranged in a hexagonal pattern. His ceremonial armor glinted under the ship's lights as he studied the small blue planet on the main view screen. "So this is Earth," he said, his translator converting his clicking speech into the standard galactic tongue. "Hardly seems worth the journey. The humans have only achieved faster-than-light travel within the last decade," Admiral, his science officer, Kex, reported. "Their expansion has been limited to their own star system and 3 nearby colonies." Zox Thurian flicked his upper limb dismissively, another primitive species to be cataloged and utilized. Still, protocol demands proper contact procedures. The massive ship had entered the Sol system just beyond the orbit of the gas giant humans called Jupiter. The fleet behind him consisted of 20 warships, far more than needed for a standard integration, but the hegemony always preferred overwhelming displays of force for first contacts. "Open communications on all frequencies they might monitor," the Admiral ordered. Standard Integration Protocol 7. On Earth, at the North American Defense Command buried deep in the Rocky Mountains, Lieutenant Jack Harper stared at his console as strange patterns began appearing across all communication bands. The small monitoring room suddenly filled with urgent alerts. "Sir," he called out, turning to his superior, "you need to see this." Commander Olivia West moved quickly to his station, her face tightening as she studied the readings. She was a veteran of 20 years in space defense, with short brown hair and eyes that missed nothing. "It's happening," she said quietly. "Translate and put it on the main screen." The message appeared moments later, converted by the advanced AI systems that had been waiting for this very moment for decades. "Attention inhabitants of Sol system. This is Admiral Zox Thurian of the Galactic Hegemony Expansion Fleet. Your world has been selected for integration into the hegemony. Resistance is historically futile and will result in immediate subjugation. Your technology level has been assessed as Category 3. You will surrender all independent governance and prepare for resource cataloging. Client species status will be assigned within 1 standard cycle." The command center fell silent. This was the moment humanity had both feared and prepared for since the earliest days of the space program. Commander West's expression hardened as she opened a secure channel to Washington. "General, this is Commander West at NORAD. First Contact Protocol Alpha is now active. The message matches our worst-case scenarios." She paused, listening to the response through her earpiece. "Yes, sir." "Understood." West turned to the room of now silent officers. "Send the prepared response. Authorization West 7 Delta 9. Lieutenant Harper's fingers moved across his console. "Response ready, Commander." "Send it," she said firmly. Across the void of space, Admiral Zox Thurian received the human reply with mild surprise. It was brief and not at all what he expected. "We respectfully decline integration. Earth remains free. Any hostile action will be met with immediate defensive measures. This is not a negotiation." The Admiral's upper eyes blinked in sequence, the Valaxian equivalent of laughter. "How amusing," he said to his bridge crew. "They think they have a choice." He turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare a demonstration. Target their largest orbital habitat. Let them understand what defiance means." Little did he know that humanity had been preparing for this day for over a century. The war that would change the galaxy forever was about to begin. The Grand Emperor Cathal lounged on his crystalline throne aboard the capital ship Eternal Dominance, his long, serpentine body wrapped around the seat 3 times, while his 7-fingered hands manipulated holographic displays showing the Earth situation. Cathal had ruled the hegemony for over 400 years, and in that time, He had overseen the integration of 23 species. They wish to remain independent, he asked, his voice carrying both amusement and mild irritation. High Strategist Vex, a member of the insectoid Trixel species, stepped forward with a formal bow. Yes, Your Eminence. The humans have formally rejected integration. Their exact words were that they would rather die than serve. Several members of the court chittered with laughter. It was always the same with primitive species, initial defiance followed by rapid surrender once they witnessed the hegemony's power. Then they shall have their wish, Cthulhu said dismissively, waving a hand through the hologram of Earth. Send the 8th Fleet. Make an example of their orbital habitats first. We want the survivors on the surface to understand their mistake. It will be done, Your Eminence, Vex replied with another deep bow. The Emperor turned his attention to other matters. The humans would be dealt with like all others before them, quickly and efficiently. On Earth, the United Terran Defense Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from all major nations sat around a massive circular table, their faces grim in the soft blue lighting of the underground chamber. General Alan Rogers stood at the head of the table, his weathered face displaying none of the fear that gripped some of the younger representatives. At 62, he had spent the last 30 years helping prepare humanity for this exact scenario. We have confirmation, he announced, his deep voice carrying across the silent chamber. The alien armada has destroyed our Limit colonies. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. The moon bases had housed over 12,000 people. They're moving toward Earth, Rogers continued. Based on their current speed, we have 24 hours before they enter bombardment range. Secretary Samantha Blackwood, a tall woman with steel-gray hair and eyes to match, rose from her seat. As head of the Global Defense Initiative, she had the authority to speak for most of Earth's military forces. Then we implement the Scorched Earth Protocol, she said firmly. If humanity falls, we ensure nothing remains for them to take. That's a last resort, said Ambassador Carlos Reyes. We should attempt communication once more, perhaps. The time for talk is over, Blackwood interrupted. They've already killed thousands. They don't want negotiation. They want submission. General Rogers nodded. All of our simulations predicted this outcome. For 3 generations, we've been preparing. Now we see if it was enough. He activated the central display, showing Earth surrounded by seemingly empty space. With a gesture, he revealed what the aliens couldn't see. Thousands of stealth satellites, automated defense platforms, and hidden fleet positions. Operation Defiance is already underway, Rogers explained. Our deep space sensors have mapped their fleet patterns and weapons signatures. We're deploying countermeasures now. Around the table, military leaders accessed secure terminals, entering activation codes for systems that had been built in secret for decades. What about evacuation? Asked the representative from Africa. The deep bunkers can only hold a fraction of our population. Secretary Blackwood's face softened slightly. The evacuation protocols began 6 hours ago. Priority citizens are already being moved to the shelters. And the rest? Someone asked quietly. The rest will have to survive the old-fashioned way, General Rogers said grimly, by fighting back. He looked around the table at the leaders of humanity. In 12 hours, we launch our first strike. If we catch them off guard, we might. The hegemony's 8th Fleet approached Earth with absolute confidence. Over 200 warships formed a perfect attack formation, weapon systems powering up as they cleared the orbit of Mars. Commander Dresvok stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unyielding Might, watching the blue planet grow larger on the main display. Primitive, but rather pretty, he remarked to his second-in-command. A shame we'll have to damage it to make our point. Dresvok was tall and thin, his gray skin stretched tight over a skeleton evolved for low gravity. Like all Neldorians, his 4 eyes could see across multiple light spectrums. He had overseen 17 planetary subjugations in his long career. This would be no different. The humans appear to have minimal orbital defenses, reported his tactical officer. A few primitive military satellites and some small armed stations. Dresvok flicked his elongated fingers dismissively. Hardly worth targeting. Begin with their larger civilian habitats. Maximum visual impact. Yes, Commander. Weapons locked on their orbital station cluster. Firing solution ready. Commence orbital bombardment, he ordered calmly. The first salvo left the lead ships. Powerful energy beams designed to cut through the primitive human structures with spectacular effect. But something unexpected happened. The beams never reached their targets. Dresvok stared in disbelief as his tactical display showed 3 capital ships simply disappearing. Not damaged or destroyed. They simply ceased to exist. What happened? He demanded, rising from his command chair. Unknown, Commander, his science officer replied, fingers racing across control panels. Sensors indicate some kind of gravitic anomaly. It's creating micro-singularities inside our vessels. That's impossible, Dresvok snapped. These primitives don't have that technology. Before he could issue further orders, alarms blared across the bridge. More ships were vanishing throughout the fleet. Then something even more unexpected appeared on their sensors. Human vessels, hundreds of them, appearing from nowhere, dropping some kind of stealth field that had hidden them completely from hegemony sensors. Across deep space, humanity's secret fleets emerged from hiding. Ships that had been built in classified orbital yards, vessels whose existence was known only to a handful of military leaders. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the stealth carrier Defiant, watching as her tactical display showed the alien fleet reeling from the first attack. At 42, Morgan had spent most of her career training for this moment, commanding a ship that officially didn't exist. Singularity mines are performing beyond expectations, reported her weapons officer. 37% of enemy capital ships neutralized. Morgan nodded, her face showing no emotion despite the historic victory unfolding before her. Deploy Phase 2 weapons. Target their command vessels. Throughout the solar system, other human ships were executing their own attack plans. From the rings of Saturn, missile platforms that had been hidden for decades launched thousands of quantum-guided projectiles. From beneath the clouds of Venus, energy platforms emerge, firing concentrated beams at the alien vessels. All ships, execute Operation Hydra, Morgan ordered, her voice steady. Attack pattern Delta. The human vessels moved with perfect coordination, executing battle plans that had been refined through thousands of simulations. They didn't fight like a species making its first stand. They fought like veterans who had prepared for this specific enemy for generations. On his flagship, Commander Dresvok watched in horror as his fleet disintegrated around him. How is this possible? He demanded. They're just primitives. His science officer looked up from her console, fear evident in all 4 of her eyes. Commander, these are not the weapons of primitives. They've been preparing for this for a very long time. Dresvok realized in that moment that the hegemony had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed the humans would be like all the others, easy prey. They were wrong. Send a message to the Emperor, he ordered. We need reinforcements, all available ships, immediately. But it was already too late. The High Council of the Hegemony gathered in the Grand Chamber aboard the Imperial flagship. 12 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in stunned silence as they reviewed the battle data. The holograms floating in the center of the room showed the complete destruction of the 8th Fleet, a military force that had conquered entire star systems without a single loss. How is this possible? Grand Emperor Cthulhu demanded, his scales shifting from royal purple to an angry red. These humans were supposed to be barely space-capable. High Strategist Vex stepped forward, his chitinous exoskeleton clicking softly as he moved. For the first time in his 300-year career, he appeared genuinely shaken. The humans, they had been preparing, Vex explained, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. For centuries, it seems, they developed technologies we never considered, weapons specifically designed to counter our defenses. They knew we were coming. Thal asked incredulously, rising from his throne. "No, Your Eminence," Vex replied. "That's what makes this so concerning. They prepared for anyone. Their historical records, which we've now accessed, show they've been preparing for extraterrestrial threats since before they even left their atmosphere." Minister Zavra, head of Imperial Intelligence, hissed softly. "Impossible. No species develops defensive capabilities against threats they've never encountered. And yet they did." Vex insisted. "Their literature, their entertainment, their military planning, all show a consistent pattern of preparing for hostile alien contact. They'd been imagining this scenario for generations." The council chamber erupted into overlapping conversations and arguments. Kethel slammed a clawed hand down, instantly silencing the room. "What do our remaining sensors tell us about their capabilities?" he demanded. Vex gestured, and new holograms appeared, detailed scans of human weapon systems. "They have gravitic manipulation technology we've never seen before. Stealth systems that completely fooled our sensors. And most concerning, they appear to have weaponized their faster-than-light technology in ways we thought impossible." On Earth, Admiral Frank Nelson reviewed the after-action reports in the Underwater Command Center beneath the Pacific Ocean. Holographic displays showed the complete victory their forces had achieved, but Nelson's weathered face showed no joy. "Final casualty count?" he asked his executive officer. 8,712 personnel lost," Commander Elena Chen reported, "most from the Jupiter Defense Group when the aliens deployed their high-energy plasma weapons." Nelson nodded gravely. "A fraction of what we expected, but each name weighs on me." He stood and walked to the main tactical display, where the remnants of the alien fleet were being tracked as they fled the solar system. Earth's orbital defenses had been damaged, but remained largely intact. The Luna colonies had suffered the worst losses, with 3 habitats completely destroyed before the counterattack could be launched. "We've bloodied their nose," Nelson told his staff. "But make no mistake, this was just their exploratory force. Now we prepare for their real response." Around the table sat the commanders of Earth's hidden fleets. For decades, nations had publicly fought and competed with each other, while secretly pooling resources to build the defenses that had just saved humanity. The Titan shipyards report all remaining vessels will be combat-ready within 72 hours, reported Admiral Hiroshi Yamamoto. The Mars defense grid is at full capacity. "And Project Longbow?" Nelson asked. General Maria Diaz, commander of Earth's Special Weapons Division, nodded. "Ready for deployment. Though I remind everyone, once used, there's no going back. The galaxy will know exactly what we're capable of." Admiral Nelson studied the faces of his fellow commanders. They had trained their entire lives for this moment, hoping it would never come. "They'll be back," he said simply. "And next time, they'll come with everything they have. We need to be ready." No one mentioned the possibility of negotiation or surrender. That option had died with the first human colonies. This was war now, a war humanity had spent generations preparing to fight. The hegemony dispatched its legendary Third Armada in response to the shocking defeat of their Eighth Fleet. Never in 12,000 years had the Empire faced such resistance from a newly discovered species. Grand Emperor Kthal had personally ordered the deployment of 20,000 ships, the largest military force assembled in 2,000 years. Admiral Xan Valar, the most decorated military commander in hegemony history, stood on the command deck of his super dreadnought, the Eternal Conquest. His tall, muscular frame towered over the other officers, his gold-flecked skin reflecting the soft light of the bridge displays. In 300 years of service, he had never lost a battle. "Display the target system," he ordered. A detailed hologram of the Sol system appeared before him. Intelligence reports had been updated with information from the Eighth Fleet's survivors. The human defenses were marked in red, their fleet positions in yellow. "Their defenses are impressive for such a young species," commented his tactical officer, "but nothing that can withstand the full might of the Third." Xan Valor studied the display carefully. Unlike his predecessors, he did not underestimate these humans. Their technology is concerning. Prepare all ships for potential gravitational attacks and unexpected FTL maneuvers. Yes, Admiral, his staff replied in unison. As the massive armada approached the edge of the Sol system, sensors detected unusual energy readings near the outer planets. Some kind of monitoring network, reported the science officer. They know we're coming. Of course they do, Xon Valor replied calmly. I would expect nothing less. Suddenly, all communication systems throughout the armada activated simultaneously. On every ship, on every display, a single human face appeared. The man wore a simple dark uniform with minimal insignia. His expression was not one of fear or anger, but of calm determination. Admiral Frank Nelson stared out at the alien commanders from displays across 20,000 ships. His message was being broadcast across all hegemony frequencies. This is Earth. We did not start this war, but we will finish it. Your previous force attacked without provocation and murdered thousands of our people. We defended ourselves then, and we will do so now. Return to your worlds. This is your only warning. On the bridge of the eternal conquest, Admiral Xon Valor laughed. The humans' audacity was almost admirable. They think they can threaten the Third Armada, he said, his voice carrying across the command deck. Prepare all weapons. We will reduce their planet to. He never finished the sentence. Throughout the vast armada, ships began to vanish, not destroyed by weapons fire or torn apart by explosions. They simply disappeared. Admiral, cried his science officer, we're detecting massive FTL energy signatures throughout the fleet. Xon Valor watched in horror as his tactical display showed entire battle groups blinking out of existence. What's happening? The humans had weaponized their faster-than-light technology in a way the hegemony had never imagined possible. They weren't destroying the ships. They were transporting them. Thousands of vessels were being forcibly jumped across space to precise coordinates. In the command center beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean, Admiral Nelson watched as the operation unfolded. Around him, hundreds of technicians monitored the most complex military operation in human history. Status of Project Longbow, he asked quietly. 15% of enemy fleet neutralized, reported General Diaz. FTL cannons functioning at maximum capacity. On the main display, they could see the results of their attack. The red dots representing hegemony vessels were disappearing, each one transported by force into the heart of a distant sun or the crushing gravity of a black hole. They're attempting to establish countermeasures, warned one of the technicians. Nelson nodded. Implement Phase 2. Activate the Jupiter defense grid. From within the swirling clouds of the gas giant, massive energy platforms emerge, weapons that had been hidden there for decades, powered by hydrogen collectors drawing energy directly from the planet itself. The battle for humanity's survival had begun in earnest, and for the first time in its long history, the galactic hegemony faced an enemy that could actually defeat them. The war lasted just 27 days. The mighty Third Armada of the hegemony had been utterly defeated, with over 16,000 ships lost. The remaining vessels fled back to hegemony space, carrying news that sent shockwaves through the ruling elite. For the first time, in 12,000 years, an enemy had not just resisted, they had won. 3 months after the Battle of Jupiter, human warships appeared simultaneously in orbit around 57 hegemony worlds. They simply materialized, bypassing all defensive systems and blockades. These ships were different from the vessels that had defended Earth, larger, sleeker, and clearly built for long-range operations. On the hegemony throne world of Cavalaxis, panic spread through the imperial capital. Orbital defense platforms attempted to target the human vessels, but their weapons mysteriously failed to fire. In the Grand Imperial Palace, Grand Emperor Cthal gathered his High Council in emergency session. They had barely begun their meeting when the chamber's security systems announced an intruder. Captain Diana Lewis of the Earth Defense Force walked calmly into the council chamber. She was of average height for a human, with dark skin and close-cropped hair. Her uniform was simple and unadorned, except for a small Earth emblem on her collar. Most striking to the aliens was her lack of visible weapons or protection as she stood before the rulers of 1,000 worlds. "How did you get in here?" demanded Cathal, his scales flushing deep crimson. "Where are my guards?" "Your guards are unharmed," Captain Lewis replied, her voice calm and measured. "They are simply unable to enter this room until our discussion is complete." High Strategist Vex chittered nervously. "What have you done to our defense systems?" "Nothing permanent," Lewis assured him. "We've simply established control over your technology, a temporary measure." She stepped forward, facing the Emperor directly. "I come with a message from Earth. The war is over. Your empire will acknowledge Earth's sovereignty and that of any world that wishes independence. There will be no further attempts at conquest or integration of unwilling species." Grand Emperor Cathal sputtered in outrage, rising to his full height. "You dare dictate terms to the eternal hegemony. We will never surrender to primitives. When our reserve fleets arrive." Captain Lewis calmly activated a small device on her wrist. Above the hegemony capital, visible through the palace's crystal dome ceiling, the moon shattered, not into fragments, but into perfectly cut geometric sections, each face smooth as glass. The pieces remained suspended, forming a complex three-dimensional puzzle in the sky. "That was a demonstration of precision," Lewis said calmly, her voice unchanged. "We could have done the same to your planet. Instead, your moon has been temporarily restructured. It will be restored once our treaty is signed." The council chamber fell silent. "You're wondering how we defeated you," Lewis continued. "How a primitive species could possibly overcome the mighty hegemony." She gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing human history. "For most of our existence, humans fought each other. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. But even at our most divided, we shared one common belief, that we were not alone in the universe, and that what waited for us among the stars might not be friendly." The display showed early human science fiction, military preparations, defense systems evolving over centuries. While you grew complacent from thousands of years of easy victories, we prepared for the worst. Every war scenario, every possible technology, every defense and counterattack. We planned for them all. Not because we knew you were coming, but because we always assumed someone would. Lewis stepped closer to the Emperor's throne. "We don't want your empire. We don't want to rule over other species. We simply want to exist without threat. And now, we're offering you peace." She placed a data device on the table. "These are our terms. They are not negotiable, but they are fair. You have 24 hours to sign." The human turned and walked toward the door, then paused. "Should you refuse, we will not destroy your worlds or your people. We will simply remove your ability to threaten others. Forever." No one tried to stop her as she left. 1 year after first contact, representatives from all former hegemony worlds gathered on neutral territory. The meeting place was a newly constructed space station, orbiting a pulsar at the edge of what had once been hegemony space. The station's massive central chamber featured a circular table with seats for over 60 different species. Ambassador Ryan Foster represented Earth. He was 57 years old, with graying hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and hardship. Before the war, he had been a professor of interspecies communication, a theoretical field that had suddenly become very practical. The chamber quieted as Foster stood to address the gathering. Unlike many of the other representatives, he wore no elaborate ceremonial garments or insignia of rank. His simple blue suit was indistinguishable from what many human diplomats had worn for centuries. 1 year ago, our species met in war, Foster began, his voice calm and measured. Today, we meet in peace. This is the path we always preferred. He looked around the room, making eye contact with representatives from worlds that had only months ago been hegemony subjects. Humanity doesn't seek an empire, Foster continued. We seek neighbors, partners, friends, eventually. The universe is vast and largely unknown. There are threats greater than any of us can face alone. A murmur ran through the gathering. Many species had already begun exploring what freedom meant after millennia of hegemony rule. Earth proposes the formation of a galactic compact, Foster explained. Not a new empire, but a true alliance of equals. Each world self-governing, each species independent, but united for mutual defense and advancement. He gestured, and a holographic model appeared above the table. A network connecting worlds not in the hierarchical structure of the hegemony, but in an interconnected web where all paths were equal. We offer our technology freely to all members, Foster said. Our medical advances, our agricultural methods, our defensive systems. In return, we ask only for the same openness from others. The Valaxian representative, once Admiral Zox Thurian, now Speaker Zox, rose to address the assembly next. His once proud military bearing had been replaced by a more thoughtful demeanor. For 12,000 years, we believed might was the natural order, Zox said, his translator conveying his clicking speech. The humans have taught us differently, not through mercy. They showed none when threatened, but through restraint after victory. He turned to face the human ambassador directly. When they defeated our greatest fleet, they could have destroyed our worlds. Instead, they offered peace, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Throughout the chamber, other representatives nodded in agreement. The humans' approach to victory had confused many species at first. In the hegemony's long history, conquest had always led to subjugation. The old empire is gone, continued Zox, and I, for one, do not mourn its passing. The compact proposed by Earth offers something the hegemony never did, the chance for all species to grow together, rather than beneath the boot of another. The discussions continued for 3 days. There were arguments and disagreements, fears and suspicions, but in the end, the Galactic Compact was signed by 49 species, with others requesting observer status until they could decide. As the delegates prepared to return to their worlds, many approached Ambassador Foster with questions about Earth and humans. Is it true, asked the representative from the aquatic Melfian species, that humans prepared for alien contact for thousands of years before achieving spaceflight? Foster smiled. We've always had active imaginations. Some of our greatest thinkers spent their lives considering what might wait for us among the stars. And yet you choose peace when you could have ruled, observed the Trixel delegate. Peace is harder than war, Foster replied. But it's the only path that leads anywhere worth going. Throughout the galaxy, a new saying spread among spacefaring species. In war, pray you never face humans. In peace, pray they stand beside you. And in the century that followed, both parts proved equally true.